Behind Closed Doors. The shocking truth of my wife's affair and the journey to rediscovery. Hi, my name's Ethan and I'm 34. For the last 5 years, I've been with my wife, Jessica. We met back in college, and she was everything a guy could want. Smart, gorgeous, ambitious. We had big plans. I wanted to be a software dev, and she wanted to make it in fashion. We thought we could do anything if we worked hard. Then reality hit. After college, I landed a job at a tech company, and Jessica started an internship at a fashion house. At first, it seemed okay. We had a nice place to live, and we saved where we could. But then things started to go downhill. I wasn't making much money, and it was hard to keep up with bills. It was tough, but we kept at it. I worked my butt off and tried to climb the corporate ladder, but it just wasn't happening. The stress started to take a toll on our relationship. Now, 5 years later, we're still together, but things aren't the same. We've lost some of the spark we had in the beginning. Life's been tough, and we've had to make some tough decisions. But we're here for each other, and that's what matters. For years, I worked my ass off, putting in long hours and giving it my all at work, hoping that my hard work would pay off with a promotion and a raise. But in a competitive industry like tech, that wasn't always the case. After 5 years, my salary was still pretty modest, and although I wasn't broke, it wasn't the life we had dreamed of either. I could sense Jessica's patience starting to run thin, even though she tried to hide it. At first, the signs were subtle and hard to notice. She started going out more, claiming it was for networking, but then she got a promotion, started meeting with influencers and rich clients, and when she came home, she'd tell stories about fancy dinners and parties. Meanwhile, I was exhausted after another day at work. Every time I brought up her salary, or how we couldn't afford a new car, or a bigger apartment, I saw the disappointment in her eyes. I tried to convince myself that it was just a minor setback. I still thought she loved me, even though things were getting tense. But deep down, I had a feeling something was off. One night, while I was waiting for Jessica, I started to get anxious. It was after midnight, and she wasn't answering my calls or text messages. I tried not to let my mind go to the worst-case scenarios. What if she'd met someone else? What if they could give her a better life than I could? When she finally showed up at 2 a.m., she was drunk and smelled like perfume. Her hair was messy, and she avoided looking me in the eyes. She said she'd just been out with friends, but it didn't seem like that to me. Over the next few weeks, Jess's absences from our chats got more frequent. She stopped telling me about her day and stopped asking me about mine. We used to be so close, but it felt like there was a gap between us now, and I was lost in uncertainty. One night, I found something that confirmed my fears. Jess was in the shower and left her phone on the counter. Normally, I wouldn't have checked her messages, but I had this nagging feeling that something was wrong. My hands were shaking when I opened her phone and saw a bunch of messages that made me feel sick. There they were, texts between her and some guy named Ryan. They weren't just friendly texts, they were flirty and intimate. The kind of texts a married woman shouldn't be sending to anybody other than her husband. Even worse, there were pictures of them together at fancy restaurants and parties, places I had never been to. He wore nice suits and smiled next to her, and she looked happier than I had seen her in months. Suddenly, everything clicked. Jessica had been secretly seeing someone else. And the kicker was that it was because this guy could give her a lifestyle I couldn't. He was rich and successful, while I wasn't. I felt sick and betrayed and like I wasn't good enough. That night, I confronted Jessica. My voice cracked as I asked her how long this had been going on. She didn't deny it. Instead, she just looked at me with empty eyes and said something that broke my heart. Ethan, you just can't give me the life I need. I've tried, but it's not enough. I couldn't catch my breath. Jessica's words kept echoing in my head, ripping me apart from the inside. You can't give me what I need, she said. I stood there, surrounded by everything we'd built together, but it all felt so fake. The woman I'd loved for years, the one I'd worked hard for, was telling me that I wasn't good enough. My whole world felt like it was crumbling around me. She didn't say anything else, just stood there with that unreadable expression on her face, waiting for my response. What could I say, though? How could I fix this? I wanted to yell and beg her not to leave, to ask why she hadn't told me earlier that she was unhappy. But nothing came out. I just stood there frozen as the weight of her words crushed me. After what felt like forever, she finally broke the silence. I'm leaving, she said, her tone calm and almost distant. I've been staying at Ryan's place for a few nights, and I think it's time for me to make it official, she continued, not looking at me, as if she wasn't part of my life anymore. I felt like she'd moved on, leaving me behind as I asked, when my throat was dry and my voice was barely a whisper. She replied, "Tomorrow. I'll come over and pick up the rest of my stuff when you're at work," and that was it. No apologies, no regrets, just a cold, clinical decision to go. I wanted to scream, to make her understand how much pain she was causing me, but I couldn't. Instead, I just nodded numbly, feeling lost. That night, I lay in bed, unable to sleep, listening to her packing her things in the other room. I could hear the soft sounds of her feet and the quiet rustle of clothing as she folded it and put it in her suitcase. Each item she packed felt like a piece of my heart being taken away. After she packed up, she just left. No goodbye, nothing. She closed the door and silence was deafening. For the next few days, everything was a blur. I was at work, but my mind wasn't there. I couldn't stop thinking about her and the other guy. I knew she left me for him, and it hurt. I tried to distract myself with work, but it wasn't working. Everywhere I looked, there were reminders of us. Our favorite coffee shop, the park where we walked, even my own apartment, which felt like a prison full of memories of a life that was gone. I was going over every moment of my relationship with Jessica in my head, trying to figure out where things went wrong. Was I not working hard enough to support her? Had I neglected her needs? Maybe my salary wasn't great, but I believed love was more important, and I was willing to compromise. But apparently, Jessica didn't see it that way. One night, I couldn't sleep and decided to look through her old stuff. In her closet, I found some boxes she'd left behind. Maybe, I thought, if I understand what changed between us, it would give me some insight and help me move on. Going through the boxes took me back to happier times, when we were young and full of hope. Those photos reminded me that we started out with so much promise. It was hard to believe she could be with someone else after all that. Then, at the bottom of one of the boxes, I found something totally unexpected. It totally changed everything. It was a letter, buried among some old papers. My heart was racing as I pulled the envelope out and opened it. My hands were shaking as I unfolded the paper. The letter wasn't from Jessica. It was from Ryan. I scanned it quickly, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The letter was written about 6 months before Jessica told me that she was unhappy. In it, Ryan talked about all these promises of happiness, wealth, and success, things that he couldn't give me. But the worst part was when he talked about the secret affair he had with Jessica. They met at work, and he used his charm and money to win her heart. She was with me, pretending to love me, but her heart was with him. It broke my heart to read that. I was sick to my stomach when I realized the truth about my marriage. I thought there was something I could do to fix it, but the reality was that Jessica had already made up her mind before I even knew there was a problem. She had chosen someone else. I crumpled the letter in my hand, feeling anger growing inside me. For months, I'd been blaming myself for not being good enough, but then I realized that nothing I could offer, money or success, could stop her from leaving. She'd been deceiving me and leading a double life, while I worked hard to provide for us. It wasn't my fault. It was hers. That realization hit me hard. For the first time since she left, I felt something other than sadness. I felt rage, pure and unadulterated rage. And in that moment, I knew I couldn't just let her go without confronting her and making her understand what she'd done. Confronting Jessica wasn't going to be easy, but I didn't have any other choice. When I found out about Ryan's letter, it felt like a betrayal deeper and more painful than anything I'd ever experienced. It wasn't just about money and lifestyle. It was about the months she'd been deceiving me, pretending everything was fine while building a life with someone else. The next day, I called in sick from work. How could I focus on coding and deadlines when my whole world seemed to be crumbling? Instead, I relived every conversation and moment we had, trying to figure out when she decided I wasn't good enough. No matter how hard I thought, I always came back to the same thing. She chose someone else over me, someone richer and more successful. By the evening, I'd made up my mind. I was going to confront her and get some answers. I didn't care about how messy it might be or how uncomfortable it might make me. I needed the truth. I knew Jessica would be at Ryan's place, so I headed there. When I arrived at Ryan's fancy high-rise building, in an area I could never hope to afford, my stomach was churning with anxiety. The whole place screamed wealth and status, things Jessica clearly loved. I parked my car and tried to calm myself, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. Was I really doing this? But yeah, I was. With my heart racing, I made my way to the building. The guy at the front desk gave me a weird look, but I told him I was there to see Jess. After some chit-chat, he buzzed me up and nodded approval. Clearly, she wasn't expecting me, but she agreed to see me anyway. When the elevator opened on the top floor, I stepped into a world completely foreign to me. The penthouse suite was exactly how I imagined, spacious and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing a breathtaking cityscape. This was exactly the kind of life Jess had always dreamed of, and now she lived her fantasy with another person. As I walked down the hall, there she was, standing at the door like she'd just stepped off a magazine cover. Her hair was perfect, her clothes designer, and her face unreadable. It was like she was a different person than the woman I'd married. "Ethan," she said, sounding a bit surprised but not totally welcoming. "What's up?" I took a deep breath to try and calm myself down. "We need to talk about everything," I said. Jessica sighed and stepped aside to let me in. I noticed that she seemed a bit different, more polished and distant. Her apartment felt cold and sterile, like it belonged to someone who cared more about appearances than anything else. Maybe that's how Jessica had become. She motioned for me to sit down, but I chose to stand. I wanted her to feel uncomfortable. I pulled the crumpled letter out of my pocket and handed it to her. She recognized it right away and unfolded it. "When were you going to tell me about this?" I asked. My voice was shaking with anger and sadness mixed together. "When would you be honest with me about what's really going on?" Jessica looked up at me, still with that annoying calm expression. "Ethan," I dashed. "Don't even try to give me excuses," I said, my voice getting louder. "I want the truth. How long have you been seeing someone else behind my back? How long have I been the fool?" She sighed and finally met my eyes. "About 6 months," she said. "We've been seeing each other for about 6 months. That hit me like a punch to the gut. So she'd been cheating on me while we were still trying to work things out. While I was busting but at a job I hated to support us. She'd already moved on." "Why?" I whispered. "Was it all about the money?" She sighed and ran a hand through her hair. "No, it wasn't about the money, Ethan. It was about everything. We'd been stuck in a boring routine for too long, and I wanted more. Ryan gave me that." I shook my head in disbelief. "But I gave you everything. I worked hard for us. You threw it all away for some rich guy." "It's not that easy," she said defensively. "I tried, Ethan, I really did. I tried to make it work with what we had, but it just wasn't good enough for me. You know, I need more than just surviving and hoping things will get better someday. I need love and passion." I asked, my voice cracking. "And what about all the promises we made? Don't they mean anything?" She looked away and couldn't meet my eyes. "Things change, people change," she said. And that's it. That was the end of our conversation. I walked away feeling more lost than I had ever felt before, knowing the woman I loved was gone. Maybe for good. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said coldly. "And I hope Ryan can give you everything your heart desires." She didn't say anything back. Instead, she just watched me leave as the door softly clicked behind me, leaving both of us feeling like our life together was over. After that, I just drove aimlessly for hours, not really wanting to go back to the empty apartment that still seemed to be hers. I had no idea where to go or what to do because my whole world revolved around her. With her gone, I felt so lost and alone. Finally, I found a quiet place to park and just stared at the city lights, reminding me of the life we'd built together. But now she was gone, and so was Jessica. I was just left with this empty ache of betrayal. But as I sat there, something started to change inside me. All that anger and pain and hurt were still there, but there was also a realization. For so long, I'd lived for others, trying to meet their expectations, be the person they wanted me to be. I'd lost sight of who I really am. But now, for the first time in a while, I had a chance to find myself. Maybe her betrayal shattered me, but maybe it also set me free. After my encounter with Jessica, the days turned into weeks, and I felt like I was in a fog, just going through life on autopilot. Every morning, I'd wake up in the same empty apartment, feeling the same loneliness that seemed to be stuck in my heart. It finally hit me that my life had changed, but I was determined to start again, even though it felt impossible. At work, my days went by, and my mood wasn't great. I tried focusing on my work, but all I could think about were memories of Jessica, the laughs we had, the dreams we talked about, and the love that once was. Sometimes, I'd just stare at my computer screen blankly, wishing for simpler times, but life doesn't work like that. One night, after a long day at work, I decided to go for a walk. Instead of heading straight home, I went to the park we used to hang out at. I parked and got out, feeling the breeze on my face. The park was pretty empty, with just a few people here and there. As I walked around, I remembered all the times I spent there with Jess. We would hold hands and watch the sunset, laughing and having fun. But now, the same view, just made me feel sad. I sat down on a bench and looked at the sky, which was all orange and pink. It was so beautiful, but it also made me miss her more. Suddenly my phone started buzzing. It was Alex, an old friend I hadn't talked to in a while. He invited me to his place for a party that weekend. It was a great way to get out of my head and have some fun. At first, I wasn't sure if I should go. The idea of socializing felt overwhelming, but then I realized that staying alone wouldn't help me get better. So I decided to go. Maybe it was time to reconnect with people and remember that I'm not alone. Alex's party was exactly what I needed. When I walked in, everyone was smiling and laughing. Friends I hadn't seen for a while gave me big hugs and were happy to see me. A warm feeling washed over me, and for the first time in a while, I felt hope. We talked and laughed about everything, from work to life, and remembered college. It felt good to just let go, even for a little while. I also met some new people, Alex's friends, who were easy to talk to and helped me feel like myself again. But amidst the laughter, there's still a lingering pain, hidden under the surface. I watch couples sharing intimate moments, and I feel a twinge of jealousy, longing for what I've lost. But then I realize I have a choice, to dwell on the past or move forward into the future. As the evening goes on, Alex notices my silence and asks how I'm doing. He knows I've been going through some tough times lately. "Hey man," he says, "I know it's not been easy. How are you really holding up?" I sigh and rub the back of my neck. It's been tough, man. Sometimes it feels like I'm in shock, but I'm just taking it one day at a time. Alex nods and understands. That's cool. Don't try to deal with it all by yourself. We're here if you need to talk or just need some company. His words meant more to me than I can ever say. In that moment, I realized how important it is to have a support system. I might have lost Jessica, but I still have people in my life who care about me. As the weeks passed, a new routine started to emerge. I started going out more often and doing things I'd put off, like playing guitar or going for long runs. Every day, I felt stronger and better. One day, while I was running in the park, I met Mia. We started talking about our favorite routes and shared some stories from our lives. It felt good to meet someone new, and we laughed and smiled, forgetting about the pain for a little while. Mia was so different. She was full of life and energy. When we swapped numbers and started planning to run together, a spark of excitement went through me that I hadn't felt in ages. It was so refreshing, and for the first time after the breakup, I felt hope for the future. But I knew I had to go slow and not rush into anything. I needed time to recover from the end of my marriage and figure out what I wanted. Still, the idea of moving forward no longer scared me. It felt like freedom. One night, while sitting on the couch, I grabbed a blank notebook and started jotting down my thoughts. I wrote down everything that had happened, the heartbreak, the anger, but eventually I found some hope within me. Writing helped me sort through my feelings and understand my journey better. It hit me that maybe this was the beginning of something new, not just in my personal life, but also in how I see myself. For so long, I'd defined myself through other people's eyes, and now it's time for me to find out who I really am, what I love, and what I want from life. As I typed those words, a weight lifted. The road ahead won't be easy. There'll be pain and sadness along the way, but I'm ready to face it. I'm prepared for the future. As summer began to fade into fall, I continued to immerse myself in my new life. The park where I had once shared happy moments with Jessica became a place of healing for me. I would run there often, letting the crisp air fill my lungs, allowing nature to wash away the lingering remnants of pain. Mia and I had become good friends, our running sessions turning into long conversations over coffee. She was a breath of fresh air, genuine and kind, with a laughter that echoed long after we parted ways. We shared stories about our lives, our struggles, and our dreams, and with each passing week, I felt myself opening up more to the possibility of something deeper. But I was cautious, knowing that I wasn't entirely healed yet. One evening, as we sat at a small cafe, sipping our drinks and watching the sun dip below the horizon, I felt a shift in our dynamic. We were laughing, and suddenly, our eyes locked. There was a moment of silence, charged with unspoken words. It was as if the world around us faded, and I realized how much I had grown to care for her. "Mia," I began hesitantly, "I've really enjoyed getting to know you. You've helped me in ways you probably don't even realize." She smiled, her eyes sparkling. "I feel the same way, Ethan. You've got this incredible spirit, and it's been amazing to see you find yourself again." Taking a deep breath, I decided to be honest. "I want you to know that I'm still figuring things out. My past still lingers, and I don't want to rush into anything, but I would love to explore what we have if you're open to it." Her smile widened, and she reached across the table, taking my hand. "I'd like that. Just know I'm here for the journey, wherever it leads." That night marked a turning point for me. I felt a sense of excitement that I hadn't felt in a long time. I was no longer running from my past. Instead, I was embracing the future, step by step. It felt liberating to be honest about my feelings and to allow myself to be vulnerable again. As the weeks passed, my relationship with Mia deepened. We went on hikes, attended concerts, and explored new restaurants together. Each moment we shared felt like a building block, slowly reconstructing my heart piece by piece. I learned to love again, but this time it was different. It was grounded in friendship and mutual respect, rather than the idealized version of love I had once held onto. However, there were still days when memories of Jessica haunted me. I'd find myself caught off guard, feeling a pang of sadness at random moments. I learned that healing wasn't linear. It was messy and unpredictable. But instead of retreating into my shell, I faced those feelings head on. I talked about them with Mia, sharing my fears and doubts. Her understanding and compassion helped me process those emotions, and with her support, I learned to let go of the hurt. One evening, as we strolled through the park, the leaves painted in vibrant shades of red and gold, I felt a surge of gratitude. I looked at Mia, her laughter echoing in the air, and realized how far I had come. I was no longer the broken man who had confronted Jessica in that luxurious penthouse. I was someone who had fought through the darkness and emerged stronger, more self-aware, and ready to embrace life again. "Mia," I said, stopping to take her hands in mine, "thank you for being patient with me, for being here through all of this." She smiled warmly, her eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. "You don't have to thank me. I believe in you, Ethan. You've shown so much strength and resilience." As we continued our walk, I felt a sense of peace settling within me. I knew the scars of my past would always be a part of me, but they no longer defined who I was. I was forging a new identity, one that embraced the lessons learned from heartbreak and the beauty of new beginnings. Months later, on a chilly evening in December, I found myself at the same cafe where Mia and I had shared that pivotal moment. This time, I wasn't nervous. I was filled with a sense of anticipation. We had been dating for several months, and things were blossoming beautifully. As we sat down, I took her hands in mine again. "Mia, I want you to know that I'm ready for whatever comes next. I'm ready to take this journey with you. No holding back." Her eyes widened with joy, and she squeezed my hands. "I've been hoping you'd say that, Ethan. I'm excited about the future." We spent the evening talking, dreaming about our plans, and laughing as the warmth of the cafe enveloped us. And in that moment, I realized that I had found my way back to happiness. I was no longer just a survivor of betrayal. I was a person capable of love, growth, and resilience. Jessica's betrayal had been a dark chapter in my life, but it had also opened the door to something beautiful. I had learned to love myself, to embrace vulnerability, and to cherish the connections that mattered. The journey wasn't over, but I was ready to face it head-on with Mia by my side. As I looked into her eyes, I felt a sense of hope and excitement for the future. This was just the beginning. If you like such stories, then be sure to subscribe to the channel. It will be the biggest support for me.